Chapter 1: Road Rage. The morning sun rose low over the asphalt, sharp and white through Ethan's windshield. The glare painted the road in liquid fire, the kind that made everyone press harder on the pedal just to escape it. He was 5 minutes late for work but driving the speed limit, 35 in a 35. Behind him, a black SUV drifted close, too close. Its chrome grille loomed large in the mirror, a set of jaws ready to swallow him whole. The horn blared. Once. Then again. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, heart pounding. Just another impatient jerk, he told himself. He tapped his blinker and moved toward the right lane, but the SUV swerved with him, blocking him. Seriously? He muttered aloud. Another honk. This time long and violent. A flood of adrenaline hit his chest, a flash of something primitive, the urge to either fight or flee. He kept calm, straightened the car, and waited for space to merge. When the road finally split wider, he edged right and let the SUV barrel past. As it did, the tinted window rolled down. A man in aviators leaned out, shouting over the wind, "Learn how to drive, you idiot!" Then the classic punctuation, a raised middle finger, and the roar of an engine retreating. Ethan exhaled through his teeth, his pulse still buzzing. Minutes later, the SUV's taillights vanished into the sprawl of Silver Ridge Estates, the gated community just a few blocks from his own house. By the time Ethan reached work, the tension still clung to him. He couldn't shake the flash of the man's face, rigid jaw, neatly shaved head, a tie visible behind the wheel. Someone respectable enough to afford that SUV. Someone who looked familiar. At lunch, he stopped by a cafe near the same subdivision. The neighborhood was lined with white fences and spotless lawns, the kingdom of the Silver Ridge Homeowners Association. Pleasant posters by every lamppost, civility builds community. He was paying for coffee when the door chimed. The SUV driver walked in. Aviators. Same suit. Same self-satisfied smirk. At his chest, a badge-shaped HOA pin glinted. He placed his coffee order, then turned directly toward Ethan with a faint curl of recognition. "Well," the man said lightly, "some people shouldn't be allowed behind the wheel. That you this morning, friend?" Ethan blinked. "You cut me off. You nearly—" "Watch your tone," the man interrupted. "I'm on the HOA board. You live on Ridgeview Circle, don't you? I think we've had complaints about your yard lately." "Excuse me. Overgrown shrubs, maybe." The man smiled, tossing bills on the counter. "We like our streets safe and tidy. Keep them both that way." He left before Ethan could form a reply, the smell of cheap cologne and arrogance trailing behind him. That night, an envelope slid under Ethan's door. No postage, no name, just a stamp with the HOA crest. Inside, notice of community infraction. Vehicle incident, public conduct. It accused him of reckless driving and disorderly behavior in view of Silver Ridge residents. A $250 fine. Due in 5 days. Ethan stared at the letter, the words merging into static. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Then silence. In that silence, he felt a truth crawl into him. The road rage wasn't a coincidence. It was a warning. Here is Chapter 2 of Under Pressure, focusing on domestic tension, emotional uncertainty, and introducing the first hints of the HOA's personal intrusion. Chapter 2: Cracks at Home. The soft clink of glasses couldn't mask the sharp edge in Mia's voice as she sat across from Ethan at the dinner table. His sister, Emma, had just left, brushing a gentle kiss on his cheek in goodbye, an old family habit that seemed harmless to him but had sent Mia into a spiral of doubt. Why did she do that? Mia's eyes were wide, hurt. "You never kissed me like that." Ethan searched for the right words, but all he felt was the growing chasm between them. "It's just how we say hello and goodbye. And nothing more. You know that." Mia shook her head. "It's weird. And everyone's talking. Your family, the neighbors, it's like you're keeping secrets." His mother cleared her throat loudly from the kitchen doorway, a look that bore years of judgment packed into a moment. "Manners matter, Ethan," she said firmly. "And appearances matter more in this community. You could lose respect or worse." Ethan looked down at his plate, feeling the weight of unspoken rules pressing down like a storm cloud. The Silver Ridge Homeowners Association's focus on conformity and control had seeped into every corner of his life, even now shaping his family's distrust. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone in his dimly lit living room. The letter from the HOA accusing him of reckless driving still burned in his thoughts. The SUV driver with the HOA pin wasn't just an annoyed neighbor. He was part of an invisible system watching, judging, and ready to punish. As shadows lengthened, Ethan realized the fight was not just about a lane on the highway, it was about his place in this tight, suffocating community. And soon, the HOA's invisible hand would reach even closer into his home and heart.
Subscribe with us now and stay connected as we journey through every chapter together. Now back to our story.
Chapter 3: The HOA Meeting. Ethan arrived at the Silver Ridge Community Center on a chilly Thursday evening, clutching the formal notice that summoned him to the HOA meeting. The building radiated sterile order: clean brushed floors, polished wood paneling, and rows of stiff chairs lined up for residents like him who rarely felt welcome. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet tension. The familiar faces around the table smiled politely but carried the weight of authority. The head sat Margaret Bell, the HOA president, radiating poised control. She called the meeting to order promptly, her voice calm but insistent as she took attendance and confirmed a quorum. The agenda was clear: review of the latest community infractions, budget discussions, and hearing resident concerns. Ethan listened as Officer Ramirez, the local cop moonlighting as HOA security, delivered a subtle but pointed warning about maintaining neighborhood peace. His gaze lingered too long on Ethan. When homeowners were invited to speak, Ethan voiced his objection to the reckless driving accusation and the sudden fine. Margaret responded with practiced grace but firm resolve, emphasizing rules and community standards. Every question seemed gently deflected, every concern regulated. After the open forum closed, board members whispered behind closed doors. The executive session began where decisions about residents' fates were made without public scrutiny. Ethan knew this was where real power resided, the opaque machinery ready to grind those who resisted. As he left, Officer Ramirez approached him quietly. "Stay in line, Ethan. We like to keep things friendly around here." The threat was clear, even cloaked in a smile. Driving away, Ethan felt the fragile veneer of civility crack further. The HOA was no neighborhood committee. It was a gatekeeper, a master of unseen control, and his fight was just beginning. Chapter 4: Cruelty on the Course. Ethan pulled open the wrought iron gate to the Silver Ridge Golf Club with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The biting chill of early morning was softened by the warm sun breaking through a thin fog. The manicured greens stretched out like a living painting, perfect and pristine. He'd hoped the club would offer a brief sanctuary, a place where the common frustrations of home and neighborhood could fade with a good swing of the club and some fresh air. Instead, the atmosphere was prickling with quiet cruelty. Near the first tee, Ethan spotted two older men leaning against their carts, their voices low but electric with derision. A younger player, who seemed new to the game, was struggling with his swing. The men snickered openly, derisive comments that tasted like acid in the fresh air. "That's not a drive, that's a whimper," one jeered, while the other added, "Think you're on a picnic, son?" Their laughter was loud, cutting through the tranquil hum of early golfers. Ethan's stomach churned. The newcomer's shoulders slumped in defeat, but before Ethan could step in, a sharp glare from one of the men silenced him. Club was a microcosm of the social order at Silver Ridge, a world that cloaked entitlement in good manners and intolerance behind soft smiles. Later, Ethan spotted a young caddy hovering nearby, her eyes wide and guarded, clutching a small, scruffy dog. A sudden, careless swing sent a golf ball careening dangerously close to the animal, which yelped sharply. Laughter erupted as the player shrugged dismissively. But the caddy's face fell, the dog whimpered, and Ethan's heart tightened painfully. That evening, summoned to meet with the club manager, Ethan was told to mind his involvement. Complaints had reached the board about his interference, the manager said, concerns that Ethan's meddling was disrupting the club's harmony. The message was clear: challenge the unspoken rules and you risk expulsion. Walking back through the manicured paths, Ethan realized the golf club was not the sanctuary he'd imagined. The artificial tranquility masked a steely atmosphere of control and exclusion. Just like the HOA, it managed to impose its will without overt force, through social pressure, mockery, and silent threats. Polished lawns reminded Ethan of cages disguised as gardens, free only in appearance, bound in reality by unspoken rules and expectations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan made a silent vow. He would not be a hostage to this world, no matter the cost. The battle for his freedom had shifted from the streets to the very heart of his community.
Let's stay connected. Subscribe and join me on this journey every step of the way.
Chapter 5: The Inheritance and the HOA's Grip. Call from the lawyer still echoed in Ethan's mind, the weight of an unexpected inheritance pressing on his chest like a second mortgage. A lifeline, maybe, but tangled in knots he couldn't yet see. He hoped the money would give him a way out. But hope, he learned quickly, was a luxury the Silver Ridge Homeowners Association aimed to strip away. Within days of learning of the estate, an ominous letter arrived. The HOA's attorney, Carl Branson, sent a notice stamped with official seals and legal verbiage, stating that unpaid community dues, fines, and damage assessments associated with Ethan's property must be settled immediately. Total was staggering, more than half of the inheritance's liquid value. But it was more than just a bill. A lien had been placed on the house. This meant the HOA had a legal claim on the property itself, capable of blocking any sale or refinancing, and eventually forcing foreclosure if the debt wasn't paid. Ethan's heart pounded when he learned the implications. Owning the house outright wasn't enough. The lien clung to the property, a shadow burdening his new claim. Paying the debts was his only option to keep the estate. But refusing meant risking everything, losing the home, the inheritance, even his future peace. The HOA's letters grew more aggressive, threatening legal action and collection proceedings. The routine courtesies of mourning had long passed. Now they sought to cash in. At home, his mother shifted tone from tentative sympathy to sharp insistence. "You must pay, Ethan. How else will you protect the family?" she urged. "If you don't, they will take everything and you'll be left with nothing." Mia's worry was palpable. "Maybe you should negotiate a payment plan," she said quietly, fearful of escalation. But Ethan, fueled by a budding sense of justice, refused to bow. This wasn't a debt he owed. It was a weapon pointed at him. He reached out to Linda, the neighbor whose husband had been crushed under similar legal onslaughts. She pulled out a folder thick with documents, letters, court papers, and warnings, all showcasing HOA abuse of power. "They prey on fear," she told him softly. "They know most people won't fight back. But you're not alone. There's a way." Ethan's new resolve drew the attention of Officer Ramirez, lurking more frequently near his home, delivering veiled warnings wrapped in false smiles. One evening, Ramirez stopped his patrol, blocking Ethan's path. "You understand, right? This isn't personal. We all want a peaceful neighborhood." "By threatening me?" Ethan shot back. Ramirez's grin slipped. "We just want compliance." That night, Ethan sat before his laptop, piecing together HOA bylaws, state laws, and leaked documents proving that the liens were often inflated, unjust, and sometimes slapped on without proper process. The HOA might have the law, but not necessarily the right. As files piled on the screen, Ethan felt something shift. His inheritance wasn't just money. It was a fight, an armor against the oppressive grip closing around him. Chapter 6: The Legal Fight Begins expanded. Ethan sat late into the night, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating a pile of documents, HOA notices, and legal pamphlets scattered across the kitchen table. The letter that arrived last week lay open beside him, an official notice of lien. The HOA had gone beyond sending fines. They had formally attached a lien on his home, claiming unpaid fees and countless fines tacked on for nebulous community damages and rule violations. The amount was crushing, more than half the inheritance from his late aunt. His heart pounded as he read deeper. This lien meant the HOA held a legal claim on his property. It was no longer just a debt, it was a legal chain threatening to bind him forever. If he failed to pay, the HOA could initiate foreclosure proceedings, forcing a sale of his home to satisfy the debt. Ethan's phone rang again. This time it was a paralegal from a prominent local law firm specializing in HOA disputes. They laid out the grim reality. The HOA filed a formal lien with the county land records, making their claim public and enforceable. They had followed the preliminary steps, notices of delinquency, a warning to pay or face foreclosure within 30 days, and then the lien filing after no payment was made. Now they could sue to gain a court order allowing judicial foreclosure, which would place a sheriff's sale date on the property, literally auctioning Ethan's house on courthouse steps. The lien included fees, interest, attorney costs, and other charges that made paying the full amount almost impossible. Even if Ethan contested the lien in court, the process would be long, expensive, and emotionally draining. The horror of it settled in. The inheritance wasn't just being threatened by the HOA's bullying, it was at risk of being completely seized. His mother arrived unexpectedly the next day, worry tightly coiled in her voice. "You're going to pay, right? This is no game. They won't stop until they own that house." Ethan refused to break. "I'm not handing over my future just because they threaten me." Rose's face twisted with concern and frustration. "You don't understand how wide their reach is. If you don't act, you lose everything. And no one's going to help you." At home, the tension was suffocating. "Mia urged caution. Maybe we should try to work something out with them. Pay what they want and avoid court." But Ethan's mind was made up. He studied the HOA's governing documents, state property laws, and past case rulings. He learned that the HOA was supposed to provide clear notices, itemize fees, and follow court procedures scrupulously, but their track record was far from clean. Ethan reached out to Linda, an elderly neighbor who shared her chilling story. Her husband lost their home after an HOA lien led to foreclosure, fueled by inflated fines and rigged hearings. The fear had silenced her then, but seeing Ethan face the fight gave her hope. She handed him a folder, letters, screenshots, court documents revealing a pattern of abuse, falsified notices, secret deals between the HOA board and contractors, and intimidation tactics through Officer Ramirez, the local cop who acted like an extension of the HOA's will. Ramirez's presence grew almost daily. One evening, on his way home, Ethan was pulled aside. With a smile that didn't reach his eyes, Ramirez warned, "This isn't personal, Ethan. But if you push too hard, things get messy. The community watches." The message was clear: relent or suffer consequences. Yet Ethan's resolve hardened. He began documenting his interactions meticulously, recording phone calls, saving emails, gathering evidence of irregularities. He studied the steps for lien removal, knowing he had to challenge the HOA's actions in court. The process was grueling. First contesting the lien's legitimacy, demanding hearings, filing responses to every legal notice. Ethan learned he could leverage flaws in the HOA's procedures, their failure to give proper notice, unsubstantiated fees, procedural errors, as grounds to invalidate the lien. In the silence of sleepless nights, amid a growing pile of legal papers, Ethan realized the fight was about more than money or property. It was about fighting a system built on control, one that sought to crush dissent under mountains of legalese and fear. With each document he read and each call he made, Ethan stepped deeper into a battle for his home, his heritage, and his dignity. The inheritance had become a weapon, and Ethan was preparing for war. Chapter 7: Rallying the Fight expanded. The threat hanging over Ethan was more than just a villainous HOA, it was a ticking legal bomb. The lien on his property meant that unless he paid the inflated charges, the HOA could move to foreclose and auction off his home. The fight would mean months, maybe years of legal warfare. But Ethan refused to bow quietly. Ethan knew he couldn't stand alone. Over the following days, he began knocking on doors in his neighborhood, speaking quietly but confidently to neighbors. His first contacts were those who had quietly lived in fear of the HOA's increasing demands but never dared challenge it. Linda, who had lost her husband's home to a similar foreclosure, urged caution but shared confidential documents that painted a disturbing picture: falsified meeting minutes, secret contracts, and a pattern of levy abuse. Armed with new evidence, Ethan found his way to the office of Dara Kim, a civil rights lawyer with a fierce reputation for taking on powerful community organizations. During their first meeting, Dara was frank. These associations wield power like a sledgehammer, capable of crushing anyone who resists. But they are not immune to the law. With the right evidence, we can challenge those liens, expose abuses of power, and fight for homeowners' rights. Together, they devised a strategy focused on procedural challenges, contesting improper notice, undocumented fines, inflated fees, and conflicts of interest among board members and contractors. Ethan's fight became a rallying cry. He began hosting meetings in his small living room, inviting neighbors to share stories of HOA bullying and financial ruin. The room filled with whispered sorrows and rising hope. Many admitted they paid fines not because they agreed, but out of sheer fear of losing their homes. "Most people just give up," Linda told the gathered crowd, "but we have a chance to make this stop." The HOA responded swiftly and with venom. Carl Branson's legal team escalated their demands with new notices, doubling fines and threatening judicial foreclosure. Officer Ramirez showed up more frequently, sometimes parking for long stretches outside Ethan's home, his smile a thin veil for the threat simmering beneath. Once, during an evening jog, Ramirez stopped him. "You're making it hard on yourself," he said quietly, "and on the community." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "I'm not giving up my home because you want it." Ramirez's smile flickered for a moment, a calculated move, and then he turned and walked away. Meanwhile, Ethan and Dara focused on building an airtight case. They meticulously documented every correspondence, recorded phone calls with HOA representatives who hinted at intimidation, and sought out procedural violations in how the liens were recorded and enforced. According to HOA law, before foreclosure could proceed legally, Ethan had to be given clear notice of all charges and the opportunity to cure the debt. The lien had to be properly filed with county records and limited to sums due at filing time, no speculative fees or penalties. The HOA was required to hold fair hearings and keep accurate meeting minutes showing due process. Any failure by the HOA would be grounds to challenge their claim, Dara explained. Beyond the courtroom preparations, Ethan worked tirelessly to unite the neighborhood. He shared knowledge about rights and resources, encouraging residents to stand firm together. Community, once fractured with fear and silence, began forming a collective voice of resistance. For Ethan, the inheritance had transformed from a personal gift into a symbol of collective fight against unchecked power, injustice, and the fear that silences. The close of one late meeting, as the sun dipped past the horizon, Ethan felt the weight of the struggle ahead but found strength in solidarity. The HOA's facade of control was beginning to crack, and he was ready for the next battle. Chapter 8: The Corrupt Judge. Courtroom was a cold theater of power, every inch an arena perched precariously between justice and control. Ethan walked in with Dara Kim, flanked by a handful of supportive neighbors who had come to witness the trial that could decide the fate of their community and their homes. Judge Robert Langston presided. Known for his stern manner and harsh rulings, Langston's reputation bore a shadow darker than the courtroom's oak paneling. Whispers had long circulated about his cozy relationships with Silver Ridge's most powerful figures, the HOA board and the law firm representing them. Contributions to campaigns, private dinners, vacations, discreet favors. The ties were many, the suspicions even deeper. From the outset, Dara presented the evidence with precision. The HOA's inflated fees, manipulated documents, secret meetings held without resident notice, they all painted a damning picture of abuse and deceit. Witnesses testified to intimidation tactics, the rampant corruption among the HOA board, and even Officer Ramirez's shadowy enforcement. Despite the strong case, Judge Langston's demeanor never wavered. He scrutinized every piece of testimony, yet his tone grew cold and dismissive when Ethan's side spoke of the procedural violations and legal missteps by the HOA. When attorney Carl Branson rose for his defense, he wielded his words like a master craftsman. Painting Ethan as a reckless agitator disturbing the peace, Branson's arguments danced deftly through legal jargon, sowing doubt and appealing to the judge's biases. He alluded to Ethan's social disruptions and framed the HOA's actions as necessary for community welfare. Langston nodded approvingly, leaning forward and signaling his agreement with subtle gestures. The verdict struck like thunder. The court finds the HOA's lien to be valid and enforceable in its entirety. All fines and fees are upheld. Mr. Ethan's objections are overruled. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Ethan sat frozen, disbelief burning in his chest. Dara's jaw clenched, eyes narrowing in silent fury. Langston's ruling was not just harsh, it was a miscarriage of justice, a safeguard for the corrupt under the guise of law. In the days that followed, Ethan unearthed deeper layers of corruption. Documents revealed that Judge Langston had accepted campaign contributions directly from Carl Branson's firm and was rumored to own investments tied to HOA contractors. Langston's court had routinely expedited HOA cases, sidelining due process and allowing foreclosure auctions with minimal evidence. His own rulings had been riddled with procedural abuses, evidence admitted late, witnesses dismissed without cause, crucial hearings skipped. The threads connected to Officer Ramirez's intimidation and the HOA's bullying tactics formed a broader conspiracy shielding the powerful. The reality hit Ethan hard. The system itself was rigged. More than just battling an HOA, he was now fighting a corrupt judicial machine protecting the elite's interests at the community's expense. Yet the resilience among his neighbors, the support from Dara, and the growing network of homeowners fed his determination. They were no longer isolated victims, but a united front ready to shine a light on the darkness protecting Silver Ridge's injustices. In the shadows of the courtroom walls, Ethan vowed, this corrupted justice would be exposed, dismantled. The fight for his home, and for everyone crushed under Silver Ridge's unyielding weight, was far from over.
Subscribe with us now and stay connected as we journey through every chapter together. Now back to our story.
Chapter 9: Exposing the Corruption with Whistleblower and Dog. The long days of legal battles and neighborhood meetings had taken a toll on Ethan, but he felt uneasy anticipation as a meeting was set with a whistleblower whose name was whispered quietly among the few who dared defy the Silver Ridge HOA's iron grip. Her name was Claire Donovan. Claire was an attractive woman in her mid-30s, with sharp eyes that held a mixture of fear and fierce determination. She worked as an administrative assistant for the HOA's management company, an insider with access to the secrets and schemes few had dared expose. Ethan met Claire in a quiet park, where her loyal companion, a golden retriever named Jasper, lay calmly at her feet. The dog's calm demeanor belied the storm brewing in Claire's mind. "I've hidden in the shadows for too long," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen the rigged meetings, the falsified documents, the kickbacks. If I don't speak up now, this nightmare will never end." She handed Ethan a folder bursting with evidence. Emails between Judge Langston's clerks and Carl Branson's office, invoices for phantom vendors, contracts with inflated prices funneled to connected companies, and even secretly recorded conversations between Officer Ramirez and board members discussing plans to intimidate homeowners like Ethan. The arrival of such a credible whistleblower energized Ethan's case beyond expectation. Dara Kim immediately began compiling the evidence into a dossier designed to shock the judiciary and public alike. Claire's presence became a powerful symbol of defiance. Her courage ignited hope in those around Ethan, showing that the oppressive HOA machine could be pierced by truth. Jasper, ever faithful, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, rarely leaving Claire's side, often calming residents and acting as a gentle reminder of normalcy amid chaos. Through the whistleblower's testimony and documentation, the enormity of the HOA's corruption became undeniable, a decade-long scheme involving election rigging, vendor kickbacks, illegal liens, and judicial complicity. As the story leaked to local news outlets and watchdog groups, the Silver Ridge community surged into action. Homeowner meetings swelled with voices demanding transparency and accountability. Attorney general offices opened preliminary investigations. Even state lawmakers called for reforms protecting homeowners from such abuses. Yet with the light of exposure came backlash. Threatening letters were left on doorsteps, Claire received ominous phone calls, and Jasper was once found trembling after being startled by an unknown stranger lurking near her home. Officer Ramirez's menacing presence intensified at neighborhood gatherings, a dark shadow reminding everyone of the stakes. Ethan found strength not just in law books and courtrooms but in the solidarity of neighbors, the brave whistleblower with her faithful dog, and the growing awareness that community could fight back. That night, under the glow of a porch light, Ethan watched Claire and Jasper leave. Her determined smile was a promise of battles yet to come, but also of hope rekindled. Truth was out. And justice, however delayed and dangerous, was awakening. Chapter 10: Justice and Restoration. The fight Ethan had so fiercely waged culminated in a powerful reckoning for Silver Ridge. The corrupt web that had ensnared the community was fraying, slowly, painfully, but irreversibly. The Judicial Ethics Board's investigation into Judge Robert Langston revealed a pattern of misconduct: concealed campaign donations from the HOA's legal representatives, repeated violations of court protocol favoring the HOA, and a blatant disregard for judicial impartiality. Langston's suspension sent shockwaves through the region. His career and reputation shattered beneath the weight of revealed corruption. Simultaneously, the Attorney General's office indicted several HOA board members and their cohorts on charges ranging from embezzlement and racketeering to conspiracy. The once untouchable HOA was now facing legal fury and public scorn. With Claire Donovan's courageous whistleblower testimony and the damning evidence compiled by Ethan and Dara, legal reforms swept through the community. New laws mandated transparent HOA meetings accessible to all residents, required audits for financial dealings, and set strict limits on liens and collection fees. Whistleblower protections were strengthened, emboldening more residents to come forward and hold their associations accountable. Ethan's own life began to stabilize amid these sweeping changes. His relationship with Mia deepened, healed by shared struggles and renewed trust. His family, initially skeptical, rallied around his cause as the truth became undeniable. Claire, once a shadowed voice of fear, blossomed into a respected leader in the community. Her golden retriever Jasper became a familiar sight, a comforting presence at meetings and gatherings, symbolizing steadfast loyalty and the gentle resilience that had seen them through dark days. Rebuilding Silver Ridge was no small task. Many homes bore the stains of HOA intimidation, and the community had to grapple with the scars of betrayal and injustice. But the shared hardship forged bonds stronger than any facade of control. Ethan dedicated himself to advocacy, partnering with local organizations to educate other neighborhoods battling corrupt associations. His home became a safe haven where residents could voice fears and learn their rights, a center of hope born from months of darkness. Even as celebrations marked reforms and victories, Ethan remained vigilant. The corrupt forces that once seemed invincible had been exposed, but the fight for justice was ongoing. Community now understood the power of unity, transparency, and vigilance against abuses hidden behind power. One warm evening, Ethan stood on his porch, watching neighbors gather in the park, laughter and conversations spilling across the open space. Jasper patted beside Claire as she smiled warmly at Ethan, their eyes meeting in quiet appreciation of everything endured and everything still possible. In that moment, Ethan understood. The inheritance he once feared losing had given him far more, a legacy of resilience, justice, and community reborn. The end.